Hello everyone. So my name is Victoria and today I'll be presenting a beginner's guide to technical writing. So a lot of my readers asked me how can they get started and what does a career in technical writing look like. So that is my motivation to make this presentation for my readers. So yeah, let's get started. A little introduction about myself. My name is Victoria. I'm a solutions engineer. I used to be a freelance full stack web developer, and uh, I'm currently everything, kind of. And I'm also a technical writer and blogger on my own blog, lowvictoria.com. So just some random facts about me. While I'm not working, I play games, read books. I collect quotes as well, so you'll probably find um, quite a lot of quotes in this throughout this presentation. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, and so let's get started. So first, let's talk about what is technical writing. So I'm gonna talk about the definition of technical writing and key characteristics that from my experience about technical writing. So, a technical writing is a type of writing that conveys information for an intended purpose. So, it can be step by step tutorials, showing people how to implement a solution to a problem, how to achieve a certain result with code, or how to integrate a certain dependency or tool into a project. So, that is usually in the context of technical writing for programming in the tech industry. So some examples I have. So these are like my real articles that I've published before. So for example, I'm teaching draggable components in React, or the React Context API with Firebase authentication. So all these are some examples from my own articles that's under this category. So the next category of technical writing can be like the explanation or logging. So it's explaining a concept in a programming language or explaining what you have learned today and 100 days of code. So those are like just some technical articles that you can write. So for example, I have a simple guide to arrow functions in JavaScript. I have the beginner's guide to build scalable apps. Next is documentation. So this is one of the most common type of technical writing pieces you'll find is documentation. So it's usually a type of official writing that you can do. It can be for personal project as well. And then it's usually about how to use a certain product, such as an API or something like that. So getting started with technical writing, let's talk about the 5 W's and 1 H. So who do you want to write for? So I would say the most important thing to remember is that you're your first audience. So when you want to start with technical writing, or at least start a technical blog, you need to keep in mind that it has to be something that you would read. So it has to be a topic that you're passionate about and something that you want to write for a long time. And maybe once you start having readers, you can think about like how what you want to write for them and what they want to read from you and how that aligns with your goals as a writer. Next is what you should write. So that kind of covers what I talked about earlier, is knowing what your audience want versus knowing what you want to write about and finding that common goal for that. So but there's many things you can start with. So for example, you can write about what you learned or any technologies that you want to learn or you're passionate about learning, so you can write about it. And then you can also log a progress of your projects, such as your dev logs, or things that you learn while you're progressing into a project. You can also record the projects of your challenges. So among the dev community, the 100 days of code is very common. So you can also do that. And there's so much more. So it's always about just being creative and finding new ideas from the community and from the people around you. So yeah, a lot of people ask me actually when you should start, and I always tell them the same thing. So I think this quote covers it all. So this is the first quote of this presentation, is that you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. So this is definitely something that I tell all my readers, is to start now, because it's better to start now than ever, than later even. So you should start. So at least get a blog running, a personal blog and just start writing, and soon maybe you'll find something that you want to write, or something that you find something you're passionate about in the area of writing. So why you should write? So I always like to talk about how writing does hone your communication skills. I think that's the most important thing, that writing help people just with their ability to articulate complex concepts in a simple terms. Especially in terms of technical writing, you need to be able to explain all these concepts to an audience, and it's kind of difficult to explain like programming concepts or things like that to an audience if you're not really good at communicating it in the first place. So I think just being able to hone that communication skills is a huge part of why writing is very important. And of course, there's other more reasons for writing as well, such as reinforcing your learning, because you're teaching to others as you're writing. So you will basically learn, retain a lot of what you teach to others more than if you just read from others or hear or discuss. Next is also building that personal brand, because as you're writing, people will start hearing your voice and it's more clearer, and some people will also like your writing style over others. It just builds your credibility as a developer, and also it also gives you more visibility in the job market, especially if your blog has a lot more traffic. And it's also a great platform for you to just voice out and just talk about your opinions in certain areas in tech or something like that. And of course, it's a good way to record your progress, see how much you have accomplished, and just continuously grow from there and learning from others. Next is, of course, community involvement. So like I mentioned, learning from others is a huge part about writing, because when you own a blog, you're also connecting with other bloggers and naturally with other people like-minded like you. And then you become an active contributor to the community, because you're providing value through your writing, you're providing helpful information to the people around you. So it's really good to be able to just participate in a community and just be involved in in the industry that you want to be a part of. So after answering all this, where do you publish? So I think this is a very important step to have and to consider when you're just starting a blog, is you need to have your own personal domain, because it's the POSSE rule, which is you publish on your own site and then you syndicate elsewhere. Because that way you'll retain your personal brand as well as the ownership of your content. So for example, for me, I have my personal domain, and then I published it on Hashnode as my main area, my main community. So Hashnode is a place where there's a community of supportive individuals, and your content will always be yours, and it's just a great platform for developer bloggers. And after that, I would syndicate to other platforms such as Medium or Dev2. So syndicating allows content imports, so it's easy. And then you also get to reach more readers, because each platform have their own user reader base. So syndicating does help reach more people, and then it'll go back all to your personal domain, because you would put in the original link as your own personal domain. So that's how I usually do it. So syndicating is very important. And of course, there's more than Medium and Dev2. There's also Reddit, Hacker Noon, and Hacker News, like everywhere you can find. So it's a good way to start gaining an audience as you start. So next, I want to talk about how do I write a technical article. So because for people who never written a technical article before, it might be difficult to understand what are the contents they should write in it, or like what's the correct format and all that. And I would say for your own personal blog, there's no like one formula or one rigid format that you have to follow, but these are just some of the things that I like to keep. So that's why I want to mention it. But yeah, you can figure out your style as you go, but these are just some of the things that I think is pretty important. So the first thing that you should have is a title. So this is the next quote we have. A good title is the title of a successful book. So title is very important, because it's your first impression. It's the reader's first impression of the article. So having a good title is important, and it has to be clear and simple to understand. So these are some of examples of my titles that I have. So I try to make it clear of what the title actually reflects, it shows the content of the article. So for example, this one is a step-by-step tutorial on how to build a React progressive web app. So I'll put the word build, I'll put the word React. So all these keywords are quite important to add. Next, I also like to mention that I don't use acronyms at all. So for example, instead of PWA, I said progressive web app, because you cannot assume that everyone knows everything. So even though PWAs is quite often talked about, but I don't want to assume that everyone knows about it. So I don't like to use acronyms. I want to keep it as clear as possible and just state it in full. So in terms of keywords, again, for example, if I use JavaScript, if it's a JavaScript article, I'll mention it in the title, JavaScript. If it's a Firebase article, I'll mention it, Firebase. So usually the technologies, it's important to include what technology is this article talking about in the title. So another thing to remember, of course, proper grammar and spelling, because that really shows your professionalism and the quality of your technical article just based on the grammar and the spelling. Next is, of course, the cover image. So these are my titles as well as my cover image. So I usually make my own custom cover image, but of course there's many cover image generators or tools out there to help you just create a good one from scratch. So yeah, it's just optional, but I would say it's nice to have, because it does show kind of like your personal style in your own blog. So next, another part of a technical article is the opening statement. So usually in the opening statement, I like to state the intention of the article. So what people can expect to read at the end of reading this article, what people expect to learn, to know about, and to gain from it. So that's the opening statement. So it's always important to have one. Next, I would transition then to headers. So usually keep the headers consistent, because, for example, if I use this size for this header, then the next header should also have the same size. It shouldn't be any smaller or any bigger, so just keep it consistent if it's the same category or the same type of header. So yeah, each headers, it's really helpful to have headers because it just kind of structures your article more, so people can at a glance see what is your article talking about and how it's organized. So it's really helpful to have headers. And of course, keep the code blocks, if you have any code blocks, readable and formatted. You don't want the HTML to have no indent or anything, or try to use some syntax, coloring syntax, so it's obvious that these are all keywords. So keeping the code blocks readable and formatted is one way to keep your article looking fresh and looking professional. So this is a example of the previous one that I show you, but without all the headers and without all the code format. So as you can see, it looks very hard to read and not as professional and not as structured without the headers and without the code blocks. So it's difficult. Next tip I have is to use pictures. So pictures, I believe that a picture is worth 1,000 words. It's always much easier to explain something, especially in terms of like step-by-step tutorials. I always like to use pictures in my article because it does help the reader understand exactly clearly what to do. So rather than describing it, you can also describe it, but adding pictures would make it so much clearer as well. So in terms of certain things that I want to highlight, I like to use bold or italic to highlight like certain key points. For example, in this article, I bolded all the buttons. So anything that has the buttons on it, like click confirm, I bolded, add IP address, I would bold it. So it just to make sure the user really notice everything that I'm writing about in terms of the buttons, because it's important that the user clicks it in a certain order. So that's why you can use these kind of text styles to emphasize on certain key points. So this is just one example. So for this article, let me show you an example when I remove all these elements that I just talked about. So it looks really plain, it's fine, but it's not as clear, and it's just not as engaging without the pictures, right? It just looks very plain. And of course, it's not as helpful to visualize without a picture. So yeah, it's better to add pictures. So now that you have known kind of the gist of like what technical writing is about, when you should do it, why you should do it, and how you can start, you've published your first article. So what now, right? Because a lot of people, after publishing a few articles, they would start just getting really demotivated or just stop writing altogether. So here are some tips for you to start your writing journey and to continue it for a very long time. So first of all is make it a habit to write, even if it's just one sentence a day, because to be honest, it's difficult to write and it's difficult to find time to write, especially if you have a full-time job. But as long as it's a habit and you'll make time for it, it's very possible to do. So for me, I write every single day. So I don't finish an article every single day. It's just impossible because I have a full-time job. But I just make it a habit to write whenever I'm free, whenever I'm just sitting down and doing nothing, instead of watching Netflix, instead of doing random things. I'll just make it a habit to write. So this is a quote that I found that kind of helps me a lot when I'm thinking about this presentation, is that motivation is what gets you started, habit is what keeps you going, by Jim Rohn. So I really agree with this quote because I think that habits are what make people in terms of productivity, just it really helps. So if something is automatic to you as a habit, then you can do it for a long time. Whereas if you're just forcing yourself to write and publish every week, then it'll be hard for you to keep it up for like the next few years. So that's tip number one. And then the next tip is developing a writing style. So what differentiates one writer from another is, I would say, is their writing style. Everyone has a unique writing style, but some people, maybe they're still exploring and they're just still experimenting themselves. But as you write more, I'm sure you'll develop this writing style that you can call your own and that you're confident in writing it in. So I would say that it's just good to be mindful of like the writing style that you want and keep it consistent. So anyone who reads your article would immediately know that it's written by you. So it's a good way to also develop your personal brand as you develop this writing style. Next is have a consistent schedule so that it's harder to get distracted. So again, I have a publishing schedule. So for example, you want to publish once a week. So make sure you publish once a week and on what day. So for example, if you want to publish every Friday. So this schedule keeps you on track because you know you need to finish an article by every Friday. So that way it keeps you on track and it'll be harder for you to get demotivated or kind of just stop writing because you have the schedule, so it keeps you accountable. So, and the next tip is publishing at your own pace. So some people think when they first start they have to publish every day just to gain a lot of audience, but to be honest, it's all about consistency in the long run. So just publish whenever you're free because you want your audience to be able to know when you publish, and you also want to be able to set yourself realistic goals. So don't publish every day unless you can afford to do that. I would say just publish whenever you are free at a fixed schedule. So that's how you will be able to write for a long time. And next is always go back to reflect and see what you can improve, and also listen to what your readers have to say about your writing. So when you first started, no one starts out writing as a genius writer. Like everyone, when they first start their first technical blog, it might sound awkward, their writing might not be as clear, but that's all fine because it's always about learning and improving on yourself. So it's always important as you're writing to always listen to any constructive feedback that your readers have, that the community have for you, and don't be afraid to learn from your mistakes. So that brings us to the next tip, which is if you want more feedback, you can actively ask for it by reaching out to more experienced writers for the advice and feedback. So within Hashnote, which is the community that I'm writing for, there's a lot of experience and very good writers in that platform. So I would say they're all very approachable and very kind people. So you can just reach them out for advice, for feedback. I think that would really help you gain a lot more experience quicker, as well as like understanding your own writing skill quicker. So next is leveraging social media. So social media is huge, especially in the tech community. Twitter is usually the main social media that everyone goes to, also Reddit. So using social media to promote your articles and to engage with your readers is a good way for you to have your own reader base as you start your technical writing journey. So I would say it's a good way to leverage of it. Next is to write. So even if the topic has been written before, so writing is not about having the most unique or like the article that no one has written about. It's just about writing in your own style and explaining it in your own way. So yeah, this is a quote that I think really uh, resonate with me, which is be yourself, everyone else is taken. So just like writing, just be yourself when you write. So even if the topic has been written before, every single piece of writing is always different and unique in their own way. So just write, and some people would resonate with your technical writing style more than other technical writers. So don't even compare yourself to other writers. So that brings us to the next point. Actually, don't compare yourself to others, because it's really incomparable, because you are all just different people with different backgrounds. So you're not it's not even possible to compare yourself with other writers. So don't just think you are a person that you just started for 1 month and like you only have 50 readers, whereas this person start in 1 month around the same time as you and he has like 2 times more. But it's really not worth comparing, because again, everyone's unique, everyone's different. Everyone learns at their own pace. So don't compare, and just keep writing, and just keep writing what you want to write, keep writing what you're passionate about, and slowly you'll just see, as long as you're authentic, you'll just slowly see more and more readers supporting you and just reading your articles. So yeah, and also don't be too concerned about the numbers, just what I've mentioned before, because it's really just about your habits and just keeping a consistent schedule to write. The numbers will naturally follow as you're very consistent. Naturally, more and more people will know about you, and if your skills have improved, people will also share your articles, and if it does provide value to people, they would also share it with other people and spread around the word. So yeah, so you shouldn't be demotivated and just only write because you want to gain a lot of readers. You should write particularly for yourself first, um, and then yeah, slowly you'll attract people who have the same passion as you, who likes reading as much as you do, and and yeah, that's how you do it. So that's kind of what I want to talk about briefly today about starting with technical writing. So if it's helpful, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of my platforms in this slide below. And of course, if you want to start creating a personal blog, feel free to use this link to join Hashnode, which is a free blogging platform for anyone to start their own free blog at their own domain. So yeah, you can join me here using this referral link. So yeah, thank you for listening, and have a good day.